Hi, and welcome back to this tutorial series where we are going over various settings within Fantasy Grounds Unity. In this short video, we are going to cover the Advanced tab within Fantasy Grounds Unity's Updater utility. This tab has a few fields that are available to you, one of which is not alterable, but the other two are. The first field is one that you will not be able to alter, and it is simply there to tell you where Fantasy Grounds Unity itself is installed. Whenever the main Fantasy Grounds Unity application has updates for the application itself, this is where they will go, but beyond that, this field is primarily informational. The next text field, called Data Directory, is the one you'll want to pay attention to, as it relates to where downloadable purchases are stored, as well as data specific to your campaigns that you might be running as a DM, or where your game cache will be stored when you're connected to DM's campaign as a player. Changing this while you have an active campaign on the go can break things, so it's best to set this before you really make use of Fantasy Grounds and then leave it alone. You should, however, be prompted for this directory the first time you run Fantasy Grounds Unity so that it knows where it should store any downloadable objects. As the screen states, if you're going to be storing the contents of this data in a folder that might require admin privileges on the system that you are running Fantasy Grounds Unity on, in order to be able to save that content to it, you might be prompted to grant those permissions, otherwise things won't save properly. The final piece I will cover is the Build Channel drop-down box, which is by default set to the Live channel. What this does is allow you to change the kind of channel your version of Fantasy Grounds Unity is going to pull updates from, and there are usually four options: the Dev, Live, Previous, and Test channels, so PREV stands for Previous in this case. The Dev and Test options are generally used internally by SmiteWorks or anyone who might be doing extension development, and the ones that will most likely concern you as a DM or a player are going to be the Live or the Prev options. Live represents what SmiteWorks considers to be the most recent published version of Fantasy Grounds Unity for general use, so that the next time they push an update to the Live channel, your Fantasy Grounds launcher screen will indicate that there are new updates pending. These can include updates to the launcher itself, to Fantasy Grounds Unity as the application, or to any of the data modules used by your installation of Fantasy Grounds Unity, such as supplements, core rule sets, modules, or any map, token, or portrait packs that you have purchased. The Previous option allows you to essentially roll back to the previously installed version of Fantasy Grounds Unity, and the first time you choose this channel, it can take a very long time for the updater to make a copy of your campaign data, your extensions, as well as any installed modules, supplements, rule sets, and graphics packs that you have purchased. This really should only be used if you've run into an issue that you suspect is related to a recent upgrade and you want to roll back to the previous version. However, it should be noted that some updates of Fantasy Grounds Unity, due to underlying changes in data structures, will break backwards compatibility. What this means is that if you opened your campaign with the most recently updated version of Fantasy Grounds Unity, and it had changes to the data structures, it would have upgraded the data related to your campaign to only function with that version of Fantasy Grounds Unity or higher. This means that you would unfortunately not be able to roll back to that previous version, and generally you will get a warning when this is going to happen. As a result, it is sometimes best to back up your campaign folder before you try to open up a campaign with an updated version of Fantasy Grounds Unity. I myself have not run into that issue, minus the time where I totally corrupted my campaign when I accidentally loaded it in Fantasy Grounds Unity and then tried to reload it again in Fantasy Grounds Classic. Luckily, I had backups, but that only worked once. The second time it happened, which is a shame on me moment, it was totally corrupted and no longer usable, as I did not realize that it got corrupted until after the 30 days of backups that I keep all had corrupted versions. Oops. In any event, if you need to revert to the previous version, you really should only be doing so if SmiteWorks is asking you to, and this is because it does carry some risks with it. However, that covers everything on this particular tab, so let's go ahead and move on to the next video in the series.